course we all know about. It's the economic crisis. We've now piled up a mountain of debt in this country. I'm not saying it was wrong to do so, but we have now piled up a mountain of debt in this country which is unprecedented. And the pace at which we pay that back will determine whether or not the markets retain confidence with us on the one hand, or if we get the judgments wrong, whether or not this fragile recovery we are now seeing is snuffed out. And let me tell you something else. Although I don't think they're saying it too publicly, but I believe it's true. I believe that if we don't get the judgments about how to deal with that economic crisis right, you will not just get an economic crisis, you'll get a social crisis too. I live in Kennington on the edge of Brixton, and I think of those great portions, those pools of poverty in our inner cities, and there are smaller pools of them here too. And I think, what was it that held these together in the 1930s? A situation probably most applicable, most similar to the one we have now. And there were things there that don't exist today. I'm not saying they were good, but there were. We all followed the same creed. We had a respect for politicians and the political process. We had a respect for the law and order. We had a respect for authority. I'm not saying they were good, but they were glues that held our society together. In many of these areas today, there is one thing that holds our society together, and that is public expenditure. And if we can inject fairness in, maybe fairness too. But if you take that away, if you cut that public expenditure too fast, I fear that you will get social division in this country. So who do you now trust to take the decisions that are right about how to handle this crisis? Do you trust Mrs. Darling and Brown, who got us here in the first place, whose failure to prevent the surge of greed launched by the Tories in the previous 11 years, they did not stop, who had the opportunity to regulate but failed to do so, who never saw this coming, whatever they say now? I don't. Do you trust the Conservatives? You know, they're the ones who set it all going. Back in the 90s, they were the ones that launched that era of greed, of overconsumption. That was where it all began. Labour's fault isn't to initiate it, it was to fail to control it. Do you trust the Conservatives? You know, the judgment we had to make when we were in the depths of that recession last year was the economic judgment of a generation. And the Tories got it wrong. They were prepared to let this country sink into the deepest possible recession, probably worse than the 1930s. And their propositions now are about cutting that immediately, which will snuff out any recovery and destroy the possibility of livelihoods for many. Do you trust the Conservatives to handle this? Do you trust little George Osborne, still wet behind the ears, to make the right decisions? I don't, and I don't think the people of Britain do either. Do not let the people of Britain forget their complete failure to make the economic judgments, to call it right when we faced this crisis last year. Don't let them forget that. Or do you trust the one man who saw this coming, who told us it was coming, who told us what had to be done, and who has been consistently right and honest in the judgments that have to be explained to the British people now? You know who I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about Vince Cape. So who do you trust? With your job, with your livelihood, with your mortgage, with your house? Who do you trust? The lot who got us into this? The lot whose origin it was to create all this and who have showed a complete failure to make the judgments that are necessary? Or the Liberal Democrats? Now that's a message that we need to send out.